him for a brief moment here. I want to apologize for cutting into your show on my
Not necessary whatsoever. But if you do it again, I'm going to find you. I'll hunt you down.
I felt so bad.
I'll let you know.
I had only planned for 9 minutes for my intro. And then when I just kept going, I'm like,
it sneaks up on you.
I was like feeling dead. So anyways, yeah, my apologies on that. And I like how your shirt matches your wall today. Looks really
tonight's the first night I went with the blue shirt. So I appreciate you calling that out. You think it looks good? I like your setup over there.
I feel very calm.
I try to go for calm, and it's very interesting because my wife says, everybody says you're calm. You are not calm. There is nothing calm about me. I have colleagues that have been watching my show, and they say, that's a very kinder, gentler version of you. And I'm like, well, I'm trying to bring people in, right? We can't necessarily do that if we're, spewing vitriol and hate like some people on the other side like to do. But I like what you've been doing. I really like your show. I've been watching your replays. Sometimes I'm a little too scatterbrained getting ready for my show, but I do have a question for you. The gentleman who was on before me, his name is Ben.
Ben, yes.
Did Ben have a better beard, or do I have a better beard?
Oh, shoot.
That man had a solid beard.
I know.
I'm voting Ben. I'm just going to vote Ben. I'm going to do it right now.
Let me give the beard to you, but he's got the hair going on.
That's pretty solid. He's got it all around.
I asked him what gel he uses, but I was like, no. Stay on topic.
I feel like it's natural. That man is just sharp. I think he's just got it. I think he's definitely got it.
Running for governor in 22. So
well, he's got my vote.
Care for it, right?
He's got it. He's got the look. He's got all of it.
Yeah, I agree. And
he was from Oregon, you said, right?
Yeah, he's here in Oregon.
Wow. Yeah. Good luck to you guys out there.
Thank you. Yeah. I know. We're just talking about how I need to stay here. I was trying to hop ship and move to Idaho or something, but
I used to live in Idaho, actually. We should talk about that sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. I love Northern, but
it was cold, but we didn't get the snow to go with it. That was always a little bit frustrating for me. It's just cold.
Yeah, well, we're supposed to get some here.
We don't get any down here in Florida. It's pretty nice.
Florida, okay.
Nice and warm down here. It's a free state.
Yeah. Well, enjoy your red state.
We love it. I appreciate you kicking it over tonight and only being 10 minutes late. We appreciate you so much.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks a lot. All right. Roll that intro, Juan. Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Here's My 2 Cents with me, your host, Keith 2 Cents Sanders. We got a big show tonight. Things are going to be a little bit different around here going forward. They say they just can't get enough of me, so we're going to extend the show from 30 minutes out to an hour. And that's going to give us a lot more time to sort of pull the thread a little bit more on what we're doing, take our time. My producer, Juan, who you may have seen in the previous episode that was on with K-Soak, he came to me and he said, listen, you're just too good. You're just too good. We need a lot more of you. That definitely was not the conversation, but I like to think that it was. All right. So this week, like I mentioned, we're going to go for an hour. We're going to have a lot to talk about. We're going to take our time. If you all want, you can go over to Right America Media on Facebook. And we have the show every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. if you're watching the replay. Every Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. If you go to Right America Media, what you'll be able to do there is you can actually type in some questions or some feedback, and my producer will be able to take a look at it. He could talk to me in my ear, and we'll be able to discuss that during the show. Also, if you want, you can find me on TikTok. I'm live right now. I've got a pretty good following going right over here, and they like to watch from behind the scenes, and they keep a good conversation going. So if you want to find me on TikTok, and maybe Juan, you could drop that across the bottom here. I'm calling you out, putting you on the spot. You can find me on TikTok at 2CentKSJ. At 2CentKSJ. So there's lots of different ways to find us. If you're finding us on YouTube and the replay, please find us on RAMtv.Live Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. Also, you can go to Right America Media on Facebook, or you can find me on TikTok. All the shameless plugs aside, let's talk a little bit about the last week that's been going on. So, like I mentioned, our social media presence has been growing, and we're going to start extending out this show, and we're going to start reaching more and more people. This is important because with all the deplatforming that's going on, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later, what deplatforming has been doing and what's starting to be done about it, thank God. But the show is starting to grow. Our station is starting to grow, and that's a good thing. Right now, people not only don't trust the electoral process of what's happening in this country, they don't obviously trust the media whatsoever. Nobody trusts CNN, MSNBC, the networks. Nobody trusts that anymore. there's good following on conservative radio, but we have to also look for the smaller outlets and to support them, because you're going to get folks like myself. And if you're new here and you don't know who I am, I'm an Air Force veteran, I'm a conservative, and I am a constitutionalist as well. And you'll see a lot of that in how I present things. Something that we're doing here on this show is we are reaching out to those that disagree with us. We have civil discourse. On my live, which is happening right now, my moderators know that we don't just shut down people who disagree with us. We ask questions, we're civil, we're respectful. Something you might have heard K-Soak mention was that maybe I kind of give off a very calm presence of what we're doing here. It's all a charade. Don't worry about it, folks. I'm a lot more animated in real life. But something that we want to do is we want to let people know that we're not what the media has made us out to be. We're certainly not what happened and the violence that happened at the Capitol. And I'm going to denounce it again because folks don't seem to think that we have denounced it. We denounced that violence, and what happened there, we will not stand for it. But where I'm going with this is with the deplatforming of Parler and the constant deplatforming of people on all the social media and the collusion that's been happening, we have to seek out and support these smaller networks, if you will. So we appreciate you being here. And with that, let's hit these big topics for this week. So we got the Time Magazine article. I'm sure a lot of you heard about that. They basically admitted that it was all rigged, but they used the term fortified. You got Trump derangement syndrome alive and well in DC. Ron DeSantis down here in Florida is out here fighting for Floridians. I think you're really going to like what he's doing. I think there was very little coverage on it this week. And of course, with everything going on in DC, no one's looking at what's going on with this COVID package, and no one has a clue what's in that package. So with all that being said, here's my 2 cents on Dems elitism. And that's really what all of this comes down to. They are the elite. They look down upon us. We are the dirty, smelly Walmart people. We are the those that believe in QAnon, and we believe in conspiracies, and we believe in all these horrible things that aren't real. We can't be trusted with information. We can't be trusted to make up our own minds. We certainly can't be trusted to find our own information. We need to be force-fed all this because, God forbid, we actually look up our own stuff or have our own opinion. Speaking of having their own opinion, I actually wasn't going to start with this tonight, but it happened today, and we have to talk about it. It's the silencing, the deplatforming, the cancellation of Gina Carano. And if you don't know who she is, former MMA fighter, former champion, and an absolute killer in the show The Mandalorian. Now, I have already had to hold my nose when it comes to Pedro Pascal. While I can disagree with him all day, I don't appreciate his approach. He makes very harsh comparisons of Trump supporters to Nazis and Donald Trump to being a dictator or a Führer and the like. I don't appreciate that approach. I've had to plug my nose here a little bit. But with Gina Carano, she did something very similar to what Pedro Pascal had previously done. And by that, I mean she posted on her Instagram that in Nazi Germany, the Nazis convinced the Germans that the Jews were so bad that they were the ones who went out and went after the Jews and then sat by idly while they were rounded up. And she made the comparison over to Trump supporters who were fearful for actually saying what their opinions are. Now, ironically, that then got her canceled. So while she was lamenting the frustrations that Trump supporters or, God forbid, conservatives actually voiced their opinions, they were worried about getting canceled. Lo and behold, she gets canceled. Now, the simple thing here is take a look at what Pedro Pascal has done. Now, the reasoning that was given was Carano denigrated, I want to use their terms correctly, denigrated in a culture and a religion, which were the Jews, when the reality was she was drawing attention to the fact that the Jews were so hated because the government made people hate them and compared them to what's happening today. She was not denigrating any religion or any culture. But then you had Pedro Pascal, who previously in 2018 was making his correlations that what was happening in Nazi Germany was happening here with people who are crossing the border. So it's always okay for one side, definitely not okay for the other. I really wanted to hit this because this cancellation culture exists. It absolutely exists. This is real, and they want to tell us that it's not. And then ironically, like I've already mentioned, you had Gina Carano, who was bringing up the fact that, hey, we're afraid to bring up our point of view for fear of being canceled. And boom, she got canceled. They want to say that she was propelling misconceptions and misinformation. And she was saying that there was conspiracy theories. No, she put out tweets that said, We can't feel like we don't trust this process. We need to fix the process to shore it up so people can have faith in the election. That was seen as conspiratorial, as spreading misinformation and disinformation. I was hearing word that she was actually supposed to star in her own spinoff, and that was taken away from her after she was supporting the idea that maybe things didn't go on the clean or on the up and up with the election. Then they found this one, which happened, I think, yesterday, and they said she's done, and they have completely pulled her. And this actually is the first topic of tonight, which goes into the idea of this Time Magazine article. Now, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it. It came out last Friday. And in this Time Magazine article, and let me bring it up for you because we're going to read a little bit from it here tonight. It's titled, let me get it for you. I want to get this just right for you. It is titled, The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. So right off the bat, they're framing it for you. They're giving you the lens through which they want you to see the world. So when we bring these things up, obviously we're conspiracy theorists. Obviously, we're making it up. We need a tinfoil hat. We can't be trusted. We're passing misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories. But when they say it, this is real. And by no means was it rigging. By no means was it stealing. Folks, it was fortifying the election. It was saving your democracy. It was saving you from the worst. It was saving you from yourself. You had already been fooled by this charlatan once. And then he was able to convince some 11 million more people to vote for him. He increased his vote from 63 million to 74 million, a record for any Republican. And they needed to, for your own safety, for your own security, for the fate of our country, for our democracy, they had to come together. Now, let me read you, I think, the most damning portion of this. This is right out of Time Magazine. That's this quote from Time Magazine. That's why the participants wanted the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election. They were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. Have you all seen the light now? Are you all prepared to kiss the ring, to kneel, to thank Zod himself, and say thank you? I'm ready. I have never felt so protected from myself before, nor did I even understand that I needed it. Thankfully for this article, and go take a look at it, Time Magazine, go take a look at it. It goes on to talk about how this was well-funded. This was well-coordinated. And it did stretch across ideologies, and it did stretch across different industries. Sounds an awful lot like the swamp we've been talking about for years. It sounds an awful lot like people who want to stay in power in DC. The enemy of my enemy. Let's work together. This outsider came in. How dare he? And worse, how dare you? And we're going to get into that a little bit later. This cabal they're talking about and the way that they're presenting it to us, that not only is it okay, not only is it not rigging the system, but they did it for you. They helped you. So dangerous for this country. Can you give me another situation where your vote just doesn't count? It just doesn't count. They told you they changed perceptions. They told you that they controlled the flow of information. When we said you're doing this on purpose to keep the Hunter Biden story under wraps, they said put a tinfoil hat on. It was just an honest mistake. We thought it had been hacked. We shouldn't have done it, said Peter Dorsey. It's okay. Everything's fine, folks. They did it for us. This is subverting our voters. This is cheating. This is rigging. This is voter suppression. All the things they're constantly screaming and yelling about that they say Republicans are trying to do. When we say the crazy thing like, can you show me your ID when you're voting? I just want to make sure that you're Joe Bob. Are you Joe Bob? Oh, that's your ID. That's great. They tell us that we're trying to disenfranchise voters to keep them from voting. Well, if that was the case, people would stop buying cigarettes and alcohol and lotto and getting mortgages and buying cars and all the other things that we have to do with an ID. Because apparently all we need to do to get people to stop smoking is ask them for an ID. Because asking people for an ID, especially those at the lower income, they can't possibly get an ID. Even though people at the lower income still buy cars and cigarettes and alcohol and go into bars with their ID. But when we ask for them to do it, we're suppressing the vote. When they actively suppress the vote, they're doing it for you. They're fortifying our democracy. They're fortifying all the institutions that we have here to make sure that you are safe from you. Now remember, when we say it, it's a conspiracy theory. We're also liars. We are flat lying, spreading misinformation, disinformation. It's so bad, CNN wants Fox shut down for it. This other rival network should be shut down for passing what they say is misinformation and disinformation. When Time Magazine says it, it's just the news. It's just a story. I'll tell you what it really is. It's rubbing it in. It's gloating. It's absolutely gloating. If this was on the football field, they'd get a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct for gloating. It absolutely is. They won. They control all forms of media. They control all the big tech. They control every medium that you see things on, your phone, your TV, the movies. They own Hollywood. They own the news. They own all of it. They got the legislative branch. They got the executive branch. I really hope that they're not able to get rid of the filibuster and then parlay that into taking over the third branch, the judicial. I'm very scared about that one. We'll be talking about that on another show. This article talked about how they formed a team. This was well funded. They actually lamented the fact that they had to go to private industry to fund it. They went to Zuckerberg himself, who put $300 million into this. Now, remember, they framed it for you at the beginning. They gave you the lens because your lens is wrong. You're looking at this and saying, this looks a lot like rigging. But they gave you the lens. The lens is they helped you. When you look at it there, you go, man, why didn't the government give more money for this? It's a shame that they had to go to Zuckerberg for $300 million. $300 million. They say, well, this was to get the ballots out. This was to get information out. This was to help people to vote. This was to change the rules in the middle of the game. This was absolutely to sway public opinion. This was in a coordinated effort to make sure you didn't see what they didn't want you to see. So that article, when it posted on Friday. And I had already mentioned that you can find me on TikTok at 2Cent KSJ. I've got a really good following going over here. I'm going to say hi to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I let that story sit for 2 days. I let it sit for 2 days. I have a podcast talking about politics. My entire social media is talking about politics from a conservative and a veteran and a father and a Christian standpoint. I didn't touch it for 2 days. This is in America. I didn't touch it for 2 days for fear of being silenced. I had previously talked about the election after the election, and as a result, I was almost deplatformed. The shadow ban was so bad, I couldn't reach anything. And I don't care what Brian Stelter says when he says that limiting your reach is not limiting your speech. Well, if you take away my ability to speak, then you have taken away my speech. So when this hit on Friday, I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I said, well, I can touch this, potentially get shadow banned, lose all my followers, and have to start all over again. Or let's sit it out, let's see what happens, and let's see how it's being enforced. Because when it happened previously, I was talking about, I wasn't so sure about what happened in Michigan. I wasn't so sure about them stopping the count in Georgia. I wasn't so sure about what was happening in Arizona. That shut me down. Now, what was great was then later other people were talking about it, and that was fine, but I digress. Back to here, I didn't want to touch it for 2 days, and then finally I had a chance to. We live in America, and people are worried about talking about things that they're passionate about, that they don't understand, that they don't agree with. Gina Carano at the top of the show I mentioned has lost her livelihood, lost her agency, lost the show because she disagrees with what they say. We're living in this culture now where they have drawn the line. Our side is right, your side is evil. There's this saying that goes that Republicans believe that Democrats are wrong, and Democrats believe that Republicans are evil. And they keep pushing this. And they do it with acts like this of cancel culture, of deplatforming. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more going further. Okay, so oftentimes on this show, you're going to hear me talk about the concept that we need to be organizing to fight against this. At the beginning of the show, I talked about supporting these smaller outlets like RAMtv.Live or Right America Media on Facebook. Seek this out. Seek it out if you disagree with it. If you found me on YouTube and you disagree with me, keep looking into this. Write to me and let's have civil discourse. You may prove me wrong. You may change my mind. I may change your mind. That would be the worst thing, I'm sure. But something that I advocate for a lot on here is that we have to stay organized and we have to stay together. And we also have to go old school with this. We can no longer just sit by while our representatives do nothing. This is a representative government. What are you doing when you go to DC? We can't keep voting on name recognition alone. We have to put pressure on them. Something that we've been harping on here is not only this cancel culture and this deplatforming, but after the election, 83% of Republicans did not trust the electoral process. When you take in the amount of Democrats who also do not trust the electoral process, you have a majority of this country who do not trust this electoral process. Now that Trump has been silenced and is out of office, who's talking about it? Not the people sitting in Washington right now, left or right, red or blue. They're already in Washington. They're going to come back with their sound bites from the impeachment. They're going to come back from their press conference sound bites. They're going to run on their name recognition and back to Washington they go. Take a look at your local representatives and the margin of victory. Sometimes it's only several thousand. It is not hard for us to organize together to put, say, 1,500 people together to start pressuring them to actually represent us, to have someone in office who represents us. Someone in particular who does do this is Governor DeSantis down here in Florida. Governor DeSantis is doing a great thing in this state that we're going to talk about a little bit more on the other side of this video. In this video, you have DeSantis calling out big tech and what he's going to do about it. Juan, can you play for me cut one?
That's why in Florida, we're going to take action. We're going to take aim at those companies and pull back the veil and make sure these guys don't continue to find loopholes and gray areas to live above the law. Under our proposal, if a technology company deplatforms a candidate for elected office in Florida during an election, a company will face a daily fine of $100,000 until the candidate's access to the platform is restored. Again, any Floridian can deplatform any candidate they choose. You simply unsubscribe, and it's a right that I believe belongs with the citizen. Further, if a technology company promotes a candidate for office against another, the value of that free promotion must be recorded as a political campaign contribution enforced by the Florida Elections Commission. And lastly, if a technology company uses their content and user-related algorithms to suppress or prioritize the access of any content related to a political candidate or cause on the ballot, that company will also face daily fines. The message is loud and clear. When it comes to elections in Florida, big tech should stay out of it.
That's my man right there. That's my man. So what's he doing there? He's saying in very general language on purpose, if you deplatform anyone, you're going to face fines here in this state. And that's going to be a good thing going forward. It's going to be a very good thing for us going forward. We could get a precedent set here. That deplatforming that they did against the president while he was sitting, against other candidates while they were running, everyone has a right to access these candidates is what he's saying. And he's absolutely right about that. And the biggest point he made there, the most simple point that he made there was, if anyone wants to deplatform them in a sense, unsubscribe. You don't have to listen to them. Ron DeSantis in this state trusts his citizens to govern themselves. That might sound familiar. We have a representative government, that's the body, but we are a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. That by the people and of the people, that's me and you governing ourselves. I can decide what I believe and what I don't believe. I can seek out my own information. This is one step of many that need to happen going forward. Now, don't get me wrong here. He's starting to run for president for 2024, and he's going to continue to put this out there. If Trump doesn't run, DeSantis is going to be my guy. He is doing great things in this state. We'll talk a little bit more about his COVID response, and we'll talk about that a little more going forward. Now, we talked about the idea of writing to our lawmakers, and I'm going to keep harping on that. We have to hit them where it hurts. And speaking of hitting them where it hurts, we have to hit these big tech companies in the pocketbook, in the wallet, making sure that it hurts. Yeah, they've got billions. Yeah, they've got tons of money. But when you get an entire state like Florida, and then you get some others that come on board, and then the lawsuits start, and then perhaps this gets all the way to the Supreme Court, and we get a national ruling, and hopefully it goes the right way and they haven't already packed the court, then we could be looking at a situation that we could finally get some accountability for big tech. Obviously, we've seen them all collude together. They all came together to deplatform Parler because they tell us that we need to find our own space, that we shouldn't be on their space where we're spitting mistruths and lies. So we go to Parler. I think that's about 2.8 million before they shut us down. So they funnel us all into one little corner, nice and easy to find all of you right here. We willingly went, then they cut us off. They can take down a sitting president. What are they going to do to you? All right, hit for me cut 2, and let's see what he wants to do about them if they continue to go down this path.
Network of Silicon Valley CEOs wield extraordinary power to the point of holistically controlling the flow of vast swaths of information in our country. In a matter of hours, a business can be dismantled, a community of friends and colleagues canceled, and even a sitting president of the United States silenced. And worse yet, a faceless and nameless group of tech employees at these companies now wield tremendous power to censor speech and enforce their viewpoint on political discourse upon the general public. If George Orwell had thought of it, he would have loved the term content moderation.
So you heard the man right there. It's a good plan. It's a good plan. And I'm glad to finally be seeing this. Before this, all we saw was Rand Paul talking about it. Oh, God love him. I know he says he's a Republican. That man's a libertarian, and we need that. We need that. We need him holding government accountable. The whole purpose of our government was to save us and to protect us from the government. Somehow we've continued to warp this and bend it and stretch it and twist it into this government shall provide. Government was never supposed to provide here. That's why we've done as well as we've done. A capitalist socioeconomic society with 50 individual large markets in our states, with the self-governed, with reasonable regulation on top of it, we grow, we flourish. There's competition. Competition is good. A rising tide lifts all boats. Competition decreases cost, increases the quality. Across the board, the only socioeconomic system ever to lift billions out of poverty. But when the left sees this and they see some doing better than others, well, depending on what you look like or where you came from or sexual orientation, those are the reasons you're not doing well. Not your hard work, not your sacrifice, not your delayed gratification, not the fact that you got up at 3 a.m. to buy Jordans, not the fact that you could be working and starting to build your resume, not the fact that you could be taking advantage of government programs that are out there to start getting an education, to get your way out of where you are. None of that has anything to do with your position other than what you look like, where you came from, sexual orientation, and otherwise. So the government must provide for us. That was never, ever the point. But when we rely on our government, then the government gets to make all of our decisions. Now, in terms of the government, there is something called the Bill of Rights. We all know about it, and there's this one called the First Amendment. So we all know it. They know that we know it, and they're not going to go so far as to actually infringe upon our rights. But when you have the entirety of big tech all on your side, all pushing your same ideology, you can rely on them to do it for you. So I mentioned earlier, I don't care what Brian Stelter says when he says that limiting my reach is not limiting my speech. That is the public square. I am allowed to stand up on my soapbox, which is where the term soapbox came from. I'm going to stand on my soapbox. I'm going to say my piece, and I'm going to be heard. And if you disagree with me, get on your soapbox. Hey, I might even give you my soapbox. You stand up, you be heard. People can do their own research. They can make their own decisions. If you had said just a couple months ago that there was a cabal of very rich, wealthy people across ideologies and industry working together to influence the flow of information, they would have said you were a liar. They would have deplatformed you. You may have even lost your position with an agency or lost your job on a very successful TV show. All of that would have happened to you just a couple months ago. Then Time Magazine writes about it. And now it's okay. In the moment, they can decide what is truthful, what is not, what is misinformation, what is not. And they're going to continue to do this if we continue to allow it to happen. We're going to come back to what we're saying earlier. Put pressure on your representatives. Organize. Write to them. Call them. Get your friends to do it. We can put pressure on them to do this. Now, I mentioned earlier that DeSantis is going to run in 2024. He's a federalist, and that's a good thing. A federalist isn't someone who from the federal position runs everything. A federalist is, I am here if this government position at this level to not be in your life, to not from DC run Iowa. I'm not going to run Virginia from DC and Florida and so on. I'm here to help you states from this position. I will be out of your way, Virginia. You do you. And hey, friends in Virginia, if you don't like it, move. Vote with your feet. You don't like it in California, move. But something I bring up every time I say that is when you flee your blue state and you flee those liberal policies, please do not vote liberal in your red state. Please, please, just please. You left it for a reason. You went to a red state for a reason. Do not bring that with you. I want to talk a little bit more about DeSantis real quick because I want to talk about COVID. And I've already mentioned that he's a Federalist and he's trusted his citizens. And you take a look at our numbers versus what's happened in New York. Now, I was taking a look at the CDC webpage today and they did a little trick there. The trick was when you hovered over to see their numbers, they had split the state from New York City and upstate. Well, I think Florida's numbers would look a lot better if you separated Miami from the rest of the state. California would look a lot better if you separated LA from the rest of the state. When you put the actual state numbers together, what they've done, and I was asked about this on my live earlier, what I thought about lockdowns. Lockdowns don't work. They keep squeezing tighter and tighter in LA, and the numbers are terrible. You look at what they've done up in New York City, the numbers are terrible, especially when you force the elderly who are most susceptible, who are infected, back into elderly homes, and you infect more people, and then, oh, we undercounted by 50%. That was found by a Democrat AG. Nobody's talking about that one anymore. But you take a look at a state like Florida that's been allowed to run itself and for the people to run itself. Now, I've seen people on my social media and on other places that say that it should be one approach across the board. This is where the Democrat gets it wrong. One approach across the board does not work. Things are drastically different every single day in New York City than they are in Mountain Home, Idaho. Things are drastically different in Orlando, Florida than they are in Burlington, Vermont. And when we do things like a $15 minimum wage across the board, or we look at a COVID response across the board, it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. All right, we got to hit the big one. We got to hit the big one, impeachment. And you know what's interesting about this being the big one? No one cares. No one cares about impeachment. Schumer doesn't even care about it. They went for, I believe it was 16 hours aside when they impeached Trump the first time. This time, Schumer in control only wanted 8 hours. That's why it's happening so fast. No one cares. The left doesn't care. The right doesn't care. The only people that seem to care are the media, who just can't get enough of Trump, can't quit him, and the Democrats who want their sound bites. They want their sound bites for their reelection campaign, and they're getting them by the pile, the truckload of sound bites. But other than nobody actually caring, because nobody is, the ratings on this are terrible. Nobody cares. Everyone knows the votes aren't there. Everyone knows that they're not going to convict. I'll talk a little bit more about why. The first reason I want to talk about the reason why, and I don't think anybody else has been talking about this. The big one that everybody wants to talk about is either A, they get the impeachment conviction, he can never run again, or B, they essentially get to smear all Republicans that voted against them. Here's the one that I say it is. This is a warning to you. This is a warning to me. This is a warning to anyone who's ever worn a red hat with white letters. Don't you ever, ever do that again. It is a shot across the bow. We sent in a disruptor. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. We sent in someone to drain that swamp. And for our troubles, we saw 4 years of absolute vitriol, lies, fake news, misinformation, nameless, faceless quotes, you name it. They did whatever they wanted for those 4 years, as long as it was negative towards Trump and negative towards you. This one, this impeachment, this one's for you. Juan, play for me cut 3. We got Rand Paul calling out the Dems on their hypocrisy.
This impeachment is nothing more than a partisan exercise designed to further divide the country. Democrats claim to want to unify the country, but impeaching a former president, a private citizen, is the antithesis of unity. Democrats brazenly appointing a pro-impeachment Democrat to preside over the trial is not fair or impartial, and hardly encourages any kind of unity in our country. No, unity is the opposite of this travesty we are about to witness. If we are about to try to impeach a president, where is the Chief Justice? If the accused is no longer president, where is the constitutional power to impeach him? June 8th, the New York Post, citing U.S. Justice Department statistics, reported that more than 700 law enforcement officers were injured during the Antifa Black Lives Matter riots. There were at least 19 murders, including 77-year-old retired police officer David Dorn. Yet Democrats insist on applying a test of incitement to a Republican that they refuse to apply to themselves. I want the Democrats to raise their hands if they have ever given a speech that says, take, back, fight for your country. Who hasn't used the words fight figuratively? And are we going to put every politician in jail? Are we going to impeach every politician who has used the words fight?
Sorry about that. I was over here on the side talking to my social media. But God bless our friend Rand Paul. Let's dissect that a little bit. So we're impeaching a private citizen. Of course, the Dems want to say, well, we impeached him before he left. We impeached him before he left. He's already out of office. What is the effect of an impeachment conviction? To remove you from office. He's already been removed from office. They tell me that the voters removed him from office. We talked about constitutionality. So we have these three branches where when you have two of them, usually the legislative and the executive, when they disagree, you have this third one that's impartial but equal on the side. It's called the judicial, and the judicial oversees it. And they look at things like constitutionality. Now, for some reason in this one, the branch that is there to determine if something is constitutional is not there. They're not even there. Chief Justice Roberts is supposed to be presiding. He said, I'm not coming. Okay. Someone's got to run this. How about the Democrat senator from Vermont who's pro-impeachment? Yes, let's do it. I'm in. Let's get that guy. We're going to put him up there. We're going to be nice, impartial situation. This is like if your neighbor accused you of something, and then your neighbor's father is the judge, and the jury is the family. That's what Trump is up against right now. His neighbor is accusing him of something. That accuser's father is the judge, and the people who are going to decide guilt or innocence are the family. That's what he's up against. And I don't know why we're surprised, but at the same time, it's a farce. It's an absolute farce. It's all for the sound bites. It's all for the re-election campaign. And it's all to continue to say, if you are with us, you are good. And if you are against us, you are with the insurrectionists from January 6th. You got Don Lemon saying, don't talk to me about Back the Blue. Don't talk to me about law and order if you're not for this impeachment. Can I be against the impeachment? Because I don't think that saying, and we're going to talk about this, I'll let Trump talk a little bit about peacefully protesting. Can I also back the blue? If I have denounced this over and over and over again, genuinely and sincerely, that violence was abhorrent and disgusting, can I still back the blue, Don Lemon? Can I? Is that okay? Can I please have that? This is the precedent going forward. Whenever I look at these situations where we could do this, I don't want to do this. It goes back to saying, while I may disagree with what you have to say, I will defend your right to say it. Because I always look at it as a situation of what if that is then applied to me? What if when the other side has the majority, they stifle my speech? We must protect the individual. We must protect those who disagree with us. That way, my speech can always be heard. That way, my rights are always upheld. Now, I mentioned this earlier about what we were kind of thinking this might have been. I talked about how Trump was sent there to disrupt DC. He was sent there to drain the swamp. I'm going to raise my hand and say, I was naive. I was naive to think that the swamp wouldn't fight back. And now I'm seeing that our naivete, big word of the day, our naivete extends to think that the swamp will ever fight back. I mean, will ever stop fighting back. That's why I've made a point already to say that this is a shot across your bow. This is a warning to you. The swamp has said, we're not going anywhere. And don't you ever send Donald Trump or anyone like him again. We want a secret cabal of very rich people across ideologies and industry to be able to come together whenever we want to decide elections, to decide the fate of your whole life, to decide the direction of this country. And of course, this precedent is just filled with hypocrisy. You heard the senator talk about it. Who in their political speech, Maxine Waters, who in their political speech, Nancy Pelosi, who in their political speech, Schumer, Obama, Eric Holder, Bernie Sanders, who has not used words like fight like hell, take your country? Who has not done that? Are we to impeach Bernie Sanders because one of his followers shot up Congress and almost killed somebody? Bernie Sanders said the Republicans' answer for your health care is your death. Someone took a gun, went after Republicans, hunted them down. Is Bernie Sanders responsible for that? I don't think so. I think his language was stupid. But how can we hold somebody accountable for someone else's decision? When you are on the precipice of making the right decision or the wrong decision, to be violent or not violent, you're the one held accountable. But here in this situation, the hypocrisy is everywhere. Are we going to hold Kamala to account because she was pointing people to a fund where they could get money to get out of jail for being violent during their protests, which turned violent and turned into riots when they stormed federal buildings and shot fireworks into federal buildings while people were still inside? Are we going to impeach her for that? When Maxine Waters says to surround the opposition, to push back on them, and then Rand Paul is surrounded as he's leaving a convention and has said that he, in that video clip, if you watch some more of it, said that he had feared for his life. Is Maxine Waters responsible for that? Are we going to get her out? You can have activists storming the Supreme Court when Kavanaugh was confirmed or when other judgments come down. That's not an insurrection. That's not a threat to our democracy. That's activism. You can have BLM, the organization, and Antifa burn, loot, murder all summer and be praised. Or you can have the language that we see here on cut 4. Can you play cut 4? Let's see how they like to talk.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
Nothing there. No problems there. Not like people have been getting jumped. Not like an Antifa member shot a Trump supporter. I believe it was in Portland and said, I'm 100% Antifa. Not like people have been going after people for wearing a Trump hat, having a Trump flag. None of that's happened. Does any of that have anything to do with that? Nope. We going to impeach or hold any of these people accountable? Nope. This is what we're dealing with. This is the precedent that's been set. There's something that's known as the tyranny of the majority. This idea of we're a democracy. We're a democratic republic. We have equal representation between our states. We have a representation based on our population. We have a representative government in a democratic process. We do not have a tyranny of the majority. And that's what they want here, and that's what they're doing here. Now, we have that language, which of course we can't hold anybody accountable for that language. But let's take a look at Trump's language leading up to what happened January 6th. Juan, can you play for me cut 5 and see what the president had to say?
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
That's it. String them up. That's it. String them up. We had people go make terrible decisions. They were violent, and unfortunately people died, and that is horrible. String them up. He said to peacefully protest and to go be heard. Now, the Democrats played some emotionally charged video. They did some very, I wouldn't even say clever, very easy editing that they did. Was that line included? Come on. That line was not included. Fight like hell, take your country back, all things that are normal hyperbole at most in a speech. That's what they pointed to. We are getting to about 10 minutes left in the show, and I really want to hit a topic that kind of hit me for the first time. It's on these COVID mandates. Doing a bit of a gear switch here, but I really want to hit this, and here's why. There's something that this administration is doing, which is a very slow drip. They are very slowly adding more and more to you to get you to accept more and more. No one's ever going to accept carrying 100 pounds per se. But if you slowly start to add weight to somebody, next thing you know, you find yourself carrying 100 pounds. So we had the mask mandate. This mask mandate came when now President Biden came in, signed an executive order that said if you're on a plane, which is interstate travel, which he has authority over, or a train or so on, thou shalt wear a mask. Well, great plan, Joe. The airlines were already doing that. Now, he may not be the smartest person, but the people around him are pretty smart. They know what this is. They're getting you used to these rules coming from them so they can tighten them a little more and they can add a little bit more. I took a family member to the airport here in Orlando, and DeSantis has not said that he's going to jail or fine people for wearing masks. He trusts us to do the right thing. So I'm in the airport, and I'm hearing this very ominous voice over the top telling me that it's federal law to correctly wear my mask over my nose and my mouth. And I said, law? This is a law? I thought in this country, our legislative branch passes bills and then sends them to the executive branch where they are signed into law and if need be, reviewed by the judicial branch. That is a law. So I looked it up. Let's take a look at what the government says an executive order is. An executive order from the Public Health Emergency, us.gov webpage. Executive orders are issued by the White House and are used to direct the executive branch of the U.S. government. Executive orders state mandatory requirements for the executive branch and have the effect of law. They are in relation to passed law by Congress and based on powers granted to the president. None of this says it's a law. But here I am walking around the airport, hearing this person tell me over and over and over, this is the law. No, it's not. Why are we accepting that? Why are we allowing that to happen? They're going to keep tightening the screws. As I've mentioned, this was already mandated. They were already doing this. Then Joe comes in, he signs it into law, I'm being told. Now here's the next thing. I'm starting to see articles that are saying that the federal government is going to push for passengers to show a negative COVID test. Well, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Well, it's just a little bit more. We're already not doing the mask. That's pretty smart. I'm being told that helps keep it down. I'm being told 2 keeps it down even more. So 10 must absolutely stop it. So if we're all cool with the mask mandate, well, what's a negative test? It's a good thing. You're doing this for your neighbor. You're being a good person. Then we're going to get to the big one. Your vaccine card. This is all to push you to accepting carrying your vaccine card and essentially squeezing you until you have to get the vaccine, whether you want it or you don't, and taking away your choice. Earlier, I mentioned a not so good analogy, the idea of no one's really just going to take 100 pounds, but if you kind of just keep adding more to them, I'll give you a better one. There's the idea of how do you boil a frog? You put a frog in a pot of water, you turn the temperature up a little bit. He doesn't notice it. You let him get used to it. You turn the temperature up a little bit more. He doesn't notice. You let him get used to it. And you keep turning that temperature up and you let him get used to it. And next thing you know, he is willingly sitting in a boiling pot of water. Everything is for a purpose. And the purpose here was not to flatten the curve or to end COVID with the mask. Everyone knows that if you throw a handful of sand at a chain link fence, some is going to get stopped, but almost all of it's going to get through. We all know these things. This purpose was to get you to start accepting another rule. Another rule. It's just a little more. It's just a little more. That's how you went from no income tax to over 30%. It's just a little more. There's always a reason. Now, one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to vaccines and it comes to this presidency and how they're approaching it. There's something they're doing that I find, I don't even want to call it clever, but of course they're going to get the great coverage from the media. They are promising things that already exist. For example, day one, they come in and they play a little mind trick, a little word game where Jen Psaki, the girl next door, the captain of the debate team, she goes up there wide-eyed and just tells us the truth when she says that the Trump administration was averaging 500,000 shots a day. Well, when you had very little at the beginning as it was getting rolled out and shipped out, and then the 1.1 million a day that were happening the day they walked in, your average is 500,000. The reality was 1.1 million shots a day were going into arms. She made a promise to the American people on behalf of the president. They were going to get 1 million shots. We were going to up 1.1 million to 1 million. Yep. We're going to up it from 1.1 million to 1 million. Now we have another promise. He wants 50%, just Joe, 50% of our schools open at least one day a week, because I don't see how that's possibly not a bad idea and not disruptive to anyone. But that aside, guess what the percentage of schools are that are currently at least in person one day a week? Right now, Joe wants to get to 50%. Right now, we are at 66%. 66% of the schools are in person one day a week. Joe is promising you 50%. That's what he's going to do for you, folks. We're going to make promises that already exist. And then he gets credit for it. And look how great he's doing. Just promise stuff that's already here. Heck, I'm going to run a campaign and promise the sun's going to come up tomorrow. And I'm going to look like a genius. And then in the summer, I'm going to run here in Florida and I'm going to tell people it's going to rain at 3 o'clock tomorrow. And guess what? I'm going to look like a genius. Just keep making these promises, Joe. Joe, if you can't sign all your dreams and hopes and aspirations into law, just promise things that are already happening and you'll get all the media coverage you want and you'll just look like an absolute genius because the media is not going to push back on you. We're going to. Other small outlets are going to. But we don't have the reach, sorry, Brian Stelter, that others do, but we're going to keep growing and we're going to keep doing this and folks are going to keep looking for it. The media is not going to give that accountability. There'll be nothing. There'll be nothing. One more quick thing I want to talk about. Always what's going on in DC is look over here, don't look over here. There's nothing to see over here. I might not even bring up over here. One thing that's look over here, we all know that a $1.9 trillion COVID relief package is coming. What's in that? People say, well, it's going to help schools open. Well, it's the $1,400. Well, it's the protection this. Those things that they're mentioning, that is not $1.9 trillion. The last time we did this, money went to Pakistan. Billions went to Pakistan for gender study, to other countries that are not necessarily friends of ours. We just print this money and it goes. Right now with this impeachment going on, there are committees who are meeting to divvy up $1.9 trillion. Call your representatives, folks. Ask them. Let's organize. I'm going to keep pushing this message here and on my social media. Put pressure on them. Where is it going? I'll tell you, if the Kennedy Arts Center doesn't get another $25 million, I'm done. I'm done. They better get another $25 million because if anybody needs it, it's them. And out of this $1.9 trillion, is any of it going to go to antibody testing? Has anyone talked about antibody testing? No. Because we can't possibly give people the information of how many people have already had it. And why is how many people have already had it an important statistic? Because it shows us if we're closer to herd immunity. If you have 100 million people who have already had it and didn't know it, and I'm exaggerating to make a point, it's going to sway things. If we've only had 3 million people who have had it, then we need to up our vaccine program, don't we? Where can we get a cool 25 million out of that? Maybe the space, I say Space Center, because I live in Florida. The Kennedy Arts Center doesn't get 25 million this time. I'll eat it. I'll sacrifice this time. Maybe we need 25 million towards antibody testing. Maybe we could see that California and LA and California and New York are a lot closer to immunity than we thought. Maybe this whole country's a lot closer to herd immunity than we thought. But we got a lot of other countries that need this money, and we got a lot of printing presses. I say we just keep printing them. Who cares? I got a crazy idea to do antibody testing. I got a crazy idea that we don't give money to other countries. But I'm just crazy, like I said. I'm going to wrap this up here. I really appreciate everyone being here today. We did an hour tonight. I think it was a pretty good show. I had my followers over here. I really appreciate all of you being here. I'm going to be on in a moment. We'll do some sidebar. If you're finding me on YouTube, again, please check us out on RAMtv.Live. You can also find us on Facebook at Right America Media. I'll put that in the description. We need to stay vigilant here, folks. We can't just continue to let them do what they want up in DC. A lot of people say that. A lot of people do. We need to push back. Call your representative. Email them. Write them a letter. Organize. Get groups together. Go to their office. Talk to them. Put pressure on them. Find out if the things that are important to you are being taken care of. And one last thing I'd like to talk to you about, if you did find yourself on RAMtv.Live or rightamericamedia.com, we are a small outlet and we're doing our best to grow. There is a donate button. Please consider clicking that and maybe if you could make a small donation. But with all of that being said, I appreciate everyone who is here tonight, and that has been my 2 cents on the Dem elitism.
It is necessary to purge the establishment.
What she's suggesting that churches do, a focus on...
That's not necessarily a good thing to start with.
They're stating it wasn't around when we needed the greatest generation of the 30s or 40s. Or...
It happened before the election because there are too many Republicans that are afraid that their wrongdoing is going to...
It's unacceptable, and I'm not going to sit here, stay silent, and not call it out. I'm calling out the lies.
With rules for Thanksgiving. Who the hell is he to tell us what we're supposed to do?
Do they think that we are so stupid that we will not notice and find out